What's going on, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be breaking down my build for the Smith of Kitava Ascendancy. Yes, you can actually ascend to this Ascendancy now. It just dropped in the new patch 0.2, the Dawn of the Hunt, and I want to explain to you guys why it's an absolutely offensive and defensive powerhouse for HCSSF in Path of Exile 2. I beat the campaign with this build, I reached level 80, and I'm currently pushing tier 10 maps. I'm currently positioned 41 on the HCSSF ladder, and it's safe to say things are going pretty well. So let's get into the build. Alright, so let's start off with why you want to choose this Ascendancy. The Smith of Kitava shines for HCSSF because it allows you to get easily capped elemental resistances really early thanks to the Coal Stoker notable, which is what I highly recommend selecting first. With Coal Stoker, stacking up fire resistance will also grant you 50% cold and lightning resistance as well, which will make your journey throughout the campaign much more cozy and less gear reliant. You will feel extremely tanky as a result of this really early on, which is a really good thing in HCSSF. I've experimented with a few other options after getting my 5th and 6th Ascendancy points, but for now I found it the most optimal to just spec into Forged in Flame to increase max resistances, along with more melee and fire damage for the time being. This is because in order to take advantage of Smith's masterwork, you essentially forego a good rare body armor with 6 modifiers, with usually more armor as well as a result of this. I encourage you to experiment here and find what works best for you. However, for me, I will hold off on using Smith's masterwork until I get all 8 Ascendancy points and have a really solid white body armor to use for it. The modifiers you can get here are extremely powerful, however I can't justify losing this absolutely cracked armor in exchange for only 2 good modifiers for the time being. Next, I'm going to talk about leveling strategies for throughout the campaign. I'm not going to go into an insane amount of detail here, but if enough of you are interested, I'd be happy to make a separate guide for playing through the campaign with this build. Let me know in the comments below. While playing throughout the campaign, you're going to want to use a combination of Bone Shatter, Rolling Slam, and Perfect Strike while empowering your abilities with Infernal Cry. Your first spirit skill will naturally be Herald of Ash for extra clearing speed, followed by Time of Need in Act 3. You can pick up Earthquake early on as well to add some extra boss damage, however your main clearing abilities will be the previously mentioned skills. I have a full Mobalytics build in the video description, so check that out if you're interested in seeing which route I took on the passive tree. During the campaign, prioritize getting yourself a good 2-handed mace every act or so, with high physical damage percent and flat rolls if possible. You're essentially going to want to work on AoE radius and damage, stun buildup, and damage with 2-handed maces to start. Picking up the Resolute technique notable early on is a must and will essentially solve your accuracy issues for the rest of the game. You'll probably get this by Act 2 or so. For clearing packs, you need to use Rolling Slam and cancel the animation by clicking Bone Shatter right as the first hit happens to make enemies prime for stun. Your Bone Shatter will blow up everything. Easy peasy. For bosses, the strategy is to just mace strike them until they get stunned, Infernal Cry, and then hit them with a nasty Perfect Strike in order to do huge damage. Around the end of Act 3, I recommend getting Giant's Blood and running a shield. Block chance is very strong for HCSSF, and it's important to work this into your build sooner rather than later. If you're new to HCSSF and are looking for some tips and tricks to help you survive the campaign, definitely check out my campaign guide. I'll leave a link in the video description. Alright guys, so here are my defenses at level 80 thus far. I'm pretty happy with how I've dialed these in, and I'll show you how I achieve this in the gear section of the video. But first, let's break down the skill gems and support gems that this character is using. Alright guys, so from top to bottom, let's look at the skill gems that I'm using for this build. Alright, first off, we have Mace Strike. So Mace Strike is essentially an attack that I use to generate stun buildup on enemies. I'm not using this really to do much damage here. It's essentially just to prime larger enemies for stun and then follow up with Bone Shatter. So on Mace Strike, we're running Overpower for more stun buildup, Ruthless for even more stun buildup, Heft for a little bit more damage, and Rage, which is actually kind of nice because by the time you prime them for stun, you've hit them a few times, you've got like 10 or 12 Rage or something. It adds a little bit extra damage to your Bone Shatter, or if you're going to use a Perfect Strike, it also adds more damage for that. Next, we got Leap Slam. So Leap Slam is the option that I chose for mobility and for stun buildup. Some people go for the Rolling Slam stun buildup method, which actually works really well, but I prefer Leap Slam for the following reasons. The first reason is because of Holy Descent. So this is actually such a crazy support gem. Right now, I'm sitting at 110 life per second, which is about 5% of my total life. But when I use the Leap Slam attack, I go up to 210%. Because of this consecrated ground on the ground. So when I jump in, I'm gaining way more, double my life regen, which is absolutely massive. So this is one of the reasons why I went for Leap Slam. The second one is for unabatting. This is another big buff and a new support gem as well. So what this does is that it gives you 25% increased armor while using the supported skill. So right now I go from 72 armor to 80% armor when I'm jumping in, plus I'm getting that HP regen. So it's just a lot safer to have Leap Slam with these two amazing supports for extra armor and for life regen. And finally, we have Brink. This is another new support gem, which is super helpful. Essentially, what would happen before this support gem was I was over stunning enemies. And so what this does is you can't actually stun any enemy with your Leap Slam now, but it will always prime for stun, essentially. So it's incredible. It's really, really good. Next up, we have Bone Shatter, which is our main AoE damage source for clearing packs. And right now, I have 20% more attack speed from the quality. If you're getting Gem Cutter Prisms, make sure to fire all those in to get that extra attack speed. It really helps when you're clearing. The faster you can kill monsters, the less likely they are to kill you. And so on this, we have Magnified Effect from our AoE, Impact Shockwave, which creates basically a second version of your Bone Shatter, which does the exact same amount of damage. So, I mean, you have to use this. It's absolutely goated. It's best in slot. This is what I'm using to break armor with as well. I'm using Devastate here, so every time that I use Bone Shatter, I'm breaking the armor of all the enemies that are primed for stun. And then this will allow me to proc Scavenge Plating, which is going to be just giving me more armor. All right, so moving on. Perfect Strike. Perfect Strike is feeling a little bit better this patch. I find that I'm missing a lot less with it now, and I think they've improved that, which is good. And you're going to be using this a lot for doing damage in conjunction with Hammer of the Gods. So on Perfect Strike, we have Fire Infusion for more fire damage, Window of Opportunity for the increased damage and the shorter timing window, and Concentrated Effect for more damage as well. Next thing we have is Hammer of the Gods. So at level 52, you are going to get access to the skill, and I highly recommend you use it. It's a little bit weird now. Basically what happens is instead of a cooldown, it's now based on how many enemies you've stunned recently. So that gives you this like resource called Glory, and you're essentially going to be stunning monsters constantly. So you shouldn't have any issue always having a Hammer of the Gods available. And on Hammer of the Gods, we're using Fist of War, which ancestrally boosts the skill, which is absolutely massive. Ancestral boost is 30% more damage and 20% more AoE. Heavy Swing for more physical damage. And Exploit Weakness, which goes hand in hand with our Bone Shatter, breaking armor. Anytime you're using Hammer of the Gods, it's going to be on someone who's stunned and therefore has their armor broken. So this gives me extra 40% damage on top of that by just consuming that fully broken armor. Moving on, we have Infernal Cry. This is your empowerment skill. This is going to give you a bunch of extra damage, and you're going to want to use this before casting Hammer of the Gods or before casting Perfect Strike. On Infernal Cry, we have Premeditation, which gives you 50% more damage on your empowered skills. Tireless, which is nice. Sometimes it gives you an extra chance to not lower your empowerment count, so you can get off a couple more Perfect Strikes that are empowered with one cast. And Dazing Cry for a little bit extra daze buildup. Next, we have Seismic Cry. Essentially, I'm using Seismic Cry with endurance charges to empower my Hammer of the Gods to do a secondary attack. So what I've done here is I've taken this notable called Cranial Impact, which gives you an endurance charge when you heavy stun a rare or unique enemy, which is very nice. And when you use Seismic Cry in the presence of a stunned enemy and you have the endurance charge, it's going to empower your next slam ability. And this essentially makes it so that Hammer of the Gods will do double the damage. It's absolutely gross. I will show you some clips of it right now. It's insane. You should definitely check this out. So on Seismic Cry, we have Murderous Intent. So when I use my Hammer of the Gods, it's going to have Calling Strike when it's empowered, and Raging Cry as well. So this is actually pretty nice because when I use Seismic Cry, I'm going to be surrounded by a bunch of monsters, which is going to generate a bit more rage, which translates to a bit more damage when I use Hammer of the Gods as well. All right, next up we have our spirit gem skills. So first off, we have Time of Need. So this is absolutely goated for this patch. With Dawn of the Hunt, your elemental ailment threshold as well as stun threshold has been reduced by about 50%. So having something that gives you life and removes ailments from you constantly is super helpful. And on here we have fast forward, which makes it so that Time of Need is happening 30% faster. And then we have cannibalism on for the 2% life recovered on kill, which is a massive amount of life that we get for just clearing huge packs. Next up, we have scavenge plating. This is going to be giving us a bunch of armor as we break armor. So with 10 stacks of scavenge plating, I'm usually sitting at around 80% to 82% armor at all times, which is very nice. And on here we have persistence, which makes it so that the buff lasts a bit longer. And we also have vitality, so we're using regenerating 1% of our maximum life, which is very nice. Finally, we have Herald of Ash. Herald of Ash is essentially just helping us with our AoE clear a bit more. It's helping finish off those enemies with the ignite that happens with overkill damage. And on here we're using Herbalism for the 30% increased recovery of life flasks, which is very good. All right, so moving on to gear. So I'm going to go through each piece of gear with you guys and just show you what I'm looking for each piece. It's pretty standard stuff for the most part. So we'll start off with the weapon. I got insanely lucky with this weapon. I actually got this weapon from the Act 3 vendor. He was just sitting in the vendor. It's got 109 physical damage. Percent increased physical damage, which is absolutely nuts, along with physical damage flat roll, fire damage, and strength. I wish it rolled with attack speed or plus to skills, but with 2 greater iron runes in there, we're at over 150% increased physical damage. So I don't think that I'm going to be replacing this weapon anytime soon. If you guys are looking for weapons, make sure to try and look for maces that have the reduced attribute requirements. With Giant's Blood, you're going to be looking for weapons that are around the 200 strength mark. That's usually like a good place to go for. So yeah, just keep that in mind. On our helmet, just pretty standard stuff. Armor, max life, and fire resistance. This is actually a pretty good helmet with like, almost 45 total fire res. This is a really good body armor, and this is the body armor for me that's making me not want to adapt Smith's Masterwork. It's going to be hard to get rid of this. So we have 1500 armor. We have the implicit for the ornate plate, which is up to 2.5% of maximum life regen per second. So we got a pretty good roll on that. Fire resistance, more life regen as well. This is just an absolutely solid body armor here, and I'm going to be using this until I get all 8 ascendancy points. I'll transfer over into the Smith's Masterwork after that. Next, we have our shield. This shield is pretty solid. For shields, you're going to be wanting to look for block chance and the physical damage reduction modifiers. Those are really great. And then on top of that, I got strength and chaos resistance, which is just super huge. So we're getting a lot of spirit from this amulet, which is allowing us to use our 3 spirit gems along with those 3 support gems as well. So if you don't have a lot of spirit, you're going to have to sort of make some sacrifices when it comes to your spirit costs and what spirit gems and support gems you can be using. So I eventually want to replace this with something that has more max life and spirit, but for the time being, this is pretty good. All right, so my gloves, pretty straightforward stuff. We got a little bit of damage, a little bit of life. Attack speed is huge. You definitely want to prioritize that. And then a nice roll on chaos resistance with 20%. Boots. Boots is, obviously 25% movement speed. You need to have that. It's super important for running around. And then on this, I just have max life, strength, a little bit of regen. I'm not super happy with these boots. I wish that this rolled with more fire resistance, but it's going to do for now. And having that 25% movement speed is very good. All right, moving on to the belt. So the belt, we got max life. I'm using the utility belt for the 20% instant recovery, which is very, very helpful in tight situations. I only have 2,000 health, so with this life flask, which gives me 1,800 health over 3 seconds, I'm getting 30 or 20% of that instantly. So I'm getting like 400 life basically instantly, which is very nice. I also got very lucky with the charm slots on this. So I'm running 3 charms, which is very, very helpful. And then I got a really nice roll on the life regen as well. For rings, I'm going full chaos rings on these ones. One thing that's going to be pretty hard and pretty item dependent and something hard to solve for the build is chaos resistance. And so I recommend running double amethyst ring here and trying to solve that issue through these rings, as well as a few lucky rolls on items. So on this one, we just have it's a pretty garbage ring, honestly. It's not great, but It's got the chaos res, all attributes. Life on kill is not bad, I guess, in the mana regen. Second ring here is a really, really good ring. I got super lucky with this ring. Basically, every time I chaos slammed it, it was something useful. Fire damage, life, fire resistance, regen, and damage as well. And then, yeah, we're going through charms. I'm using the freezing charm, poison charm, and stun charm as well. And then I already showed you the flask, but flask, you just want to get increased amount. Just get as much life regen as possible. And then the same goes for mana flask as well. All right, next up is the passive tree. So there's quite a few people using Smith of Kitava at the moment and building their character in slightly different ways. We're going to look at why I built this character this way and how it's worked for me well so far. So starting off with our ascendancy points, we went into fire res, coal stoker. Obviously, you need to get this. This is like Abyss. And then fire resistance and forged in flame. And Forged in Flame is really good as soon as you get this notable here, which is Unnatural Resilience, plus 1% maximum fire res for each 40% uncapped fire res. And because you're stacking so much fire res, you should have no problem getting up to 80% max LE res as soon as you pick this up. Basically, all your gear and all of your sockets, you're going to be just running fire resistance and everything, trying to get as much fire resistance as possible, which is great because this fire resistance is translating into your elemental resistances. And then the last 2 points I just have been melee damage and fire damage. I've already explained sort of my thought process behind this. I don't want to go into Smith Masterworks because I have such a good body armor. But if you're not as lucky as me and you don't have something as strong as this, you could put these 2 points into something like, increased strength or maximum life as well. Those are both really great options. All right, so moving through the tree here, pretty standard opening. Went for more melee damage into brutal, and then I grabbed smash, reverberating impact. Also grabbed burn away here. We do a lot of fire damage with this build, so having this, which pens fire resistance and does more damage, as well as increases the magnitude of ignite, is just really, really nice. And then down here, we have a couple nice defensive stuff that you need to pick up. So this is very, very strong, especially if you're using body armor with really high armor. So with me, I'm getting 80% more armor from this 1500, which is absolutely huge. And then I have Relentless here as well for a little bit of regen, some more armor, and then block chance. Moving down here, attack speed is going to feel really nice on this build, especially if you don't have attack speed on your weapon. So you want to be killing things as fastly as possible so they don't basically kill you. So having the attack speed to get those bone shatter hits off sooner rather than later is super important. All right, moving on. We came down here. We got some block chance. Right now we're sitting at 67 blocks, so pretty comfy with that. So we want to get that up to cap as soon as possible. Moving right along, we went down here and picked up polished iron. This is super nice because, as I mentioned before, your stun threshold is much lower now in this patch. So getting more stun threshold anywhere you can is super important. I also probably want to pick up this eventually as well, because critical hits can definitely catch you off guard. And then, of course, you're going to want to get the two-handed damage tree here for the additional damage with your two-handed mace and the additional AoE. And then after that, area effect damage here, and then the 40% increased area of aftershocks, which is basically increasing your aftershock from bone shatter using the impact shockwave by 40%, which is massive. So the aftershocks are just huge with this notable. And then, of course, getting beef. And then for the jewel socket, right now I only have one jewel socket in this build. I'm going to eventually build over to here and get the second jewel socket, as well as the maximum resistances as I level up more. But for this one, I basically haven't found too many rubies yet, but this ruby is decent, so it's giving me a little bit more block chance, which is super nice. And then the rest of the stuff is just whatever. Resolute technique. So this is something that you definitely want to pick up earlier rather than later. This is going to solve your accuracy issues. You can never miss your attacks. And then over down here, another thing that it's so important, guys, to get that stun threshold up as well as that elemental ailment threshold. So unbreaking has become, I think, a must pick up for this build as well. You just need to have it. And leading up to it, you get more increased stun threshold as well. And then we talked about cranial impact. This is working with the skill Seismic Cry. So when you stun a boss or a rare enemy, you're getting that endurance charge, consuming that with Seismic Cry, and then that's giving you an empowered Hammer of the Gods that deals double damage. Then down here we have Crushing Verdict, so we're going to take the reduced attack speed on this because it gives you so much increased damage and stun buildup. And then at the fork, we go up for Skull Crusher for more stun buildup, or sorry, more damage against stunned enemies. And then this little fire area here is super nice. You get Fire Pen, you get more magnitude of ignite, and then you're dealing an insane amount of damage with enemies who are ignited, and fire exposure on heavy stun, which you'll be doing quite a lot. All right, and finally at the other end of the tree, we are picking up these nodes for extra strength and then more damage per 15 strength. We're picking up Giant's Blood, obviously, to run the shield. Unnatural Resilience, finally. So this is going to be sort of where you want to be at level 80. You want to be getting to here so that you can essentially start overcapping on that elemental resistance. I think my goal for the build is to have like 85 to 90, well, I guess max elemental resistance cap. It's just going to feel so cozy. And the difference here, guys, between 75% to 80% is already huge. It just gets so much better as you keep improving those elemental resistance maximums. All right, guys, so that's pretty much everything in terms of a breakdown for this build. I've had a lot of fun actually playing through the campaign again as the Smith of Kitava. It just feels insanely strong and also just incredibly durable with the amount of you know, elemental resistances that you get pretty early on. Armor's feeling a bit better. And yeah, once I got block into that build as well, it's just feeling incredibly cozy. One thing to look out for, guys, is the armor break modifier on rare monsters can absolutely destroy this build. So block is your best friend when it comes to mitigating that, because block is going to essentially negate the armor break hits, and so it's going to negate that effect on you. So the higher chance of block you have, the less likely you're going to be affected by armor break. And armor break, you know, it goes both ways. Right now, if you have your armor broken, your character is taking 20% more physical damage. So on the Smith of Kitava, if you don't have armor, you're taking a lot of damage and you're probably going to rip. So, you know, pay attention to the block, guys. Pay attention to where you're leaping as well. Look before you leap, because if you're leaping into a pack and they got armor break, it can be bad news, especially if you get stunned or something like that. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This is my first ever time doing any sort of build guide. I feel like I finally earned the right to make a build guide with how well I've been doing in HCSSF in the new patch. So if you enjoyed, I'd appreciate a like and maybe subscribe for more PoE 2 content. Also check out the Passive Tree podcast that I've been doing. I'm having some great chats with a bunch of people who are interested in PoE 2 or are content creators. So really excited to have a new episode coming every Thursday. So check that out. And until next time, happy blasting, and I'll see you folks in the next one. Peace.